So this is a very brand new institute for the Brain, Mind, and Cancer Research Institute. I am the head of the center. So today, starting from the lecture by Novetarians, and also the gene, and also that's the cell divisions. Now I will have complete different topics. So I myself was a psychiatrist. So I've been the professor of the psychiatric department until 2 years ago. So I was the expert of that people with the depressions. So I was treating the people with the depressions, and I was doing that research for many years. Here, as been shown here, there are two projects I'm working on. One is the expertise area. So AMED gave us a support, and we do this AMED depression research project. So we are the core center for the study on with depressions. And also, last 5-6 years ago, this will be the 6 years, Center of Innovation. So innovative programs. So we got the subsidy from the Ministry of the Education, Science, and Sports. So this is the core center for the Cancer Innovation Project Center. This is completely different from the Depression Research Center. So this is more study on the exciting or wakwak feeling. And so we try to visualize it and try to implicate it to the industry as well. So there are two projects running. So today, I will make a very presentation brief, and since everything goes so fast, so maybe I shouldn't cut my presentation, but anyway, so I'd like to share some of my informations with you. And so that's the title is the visualization of Kansei using neuroscience. So what is Kansei? We often the word the polishing the Kansei, or maybe the sharp Kansei, but what is Kansei then? It's probably very different from person to person and different way of using it. So on the other hand, Kansei, we don't have the proper English word to be used for this. So there is a feeling, or maybe that's the emotions, but something similar, but what we call kansei is a bit different from those. So like a wabi, sabi, or maybe very sensitive feeling. So it's a bit different from the affections. So the awareness of self-affection based on past experience and future prediction may be difficult to understand it, but this is, if it is negative kansei, for example, people are living predicting what comes next. So even the people here, you probably expect something. And so prediction of expectations and what you have experienced in the past, and comparing with those, if those doesn't meet your expectation, you are disappointing. But if there is anything more than you expected, then you have excitement. So based on the past experience and predict the future, and then you notice something, then so this is a kind of self-awareness of self-affections. So Kansei is more than just anger or sadness or, that is, Kansei is more sensitive and subtle. And negative Kansei is like a depression, or then when you predict it and you have anxiety or anxiety disorder. And then positive Kansei is when you predict it, then something good will happen based on or compared with the experience in the past. So then something good should happen, then you feel very waku exciting. Or maybe your heart beats. Or if it is more than what you expect, then you feel a kind of accomplishment. So this kind of Kansei, the emotional study have been done for many years, and also be done in globally, but Kansei itself, probably this is very Japanese original perceptions. So in neuroscience and also the psychiatry or psychology perspective, and also combined with the neuroimaging, so to visualize the activity of the brains. So using the MRI, so you can find it at any hospitals. Using those MRI, you can see the activity of the brains, and so neuroimaging, and also there's brain activities, and using the sensing, the various data are collected, and then using AI, then this can be utilized based on the neuroscience, and they visualize it. So instead of just the subjective evaluations, but we can put it to or change it to the objective evaluations. That's what we're looking for. So the negative Kansei, the related disease is depressions. So depressions, this is data from 1996. So these are the people who came to hospital to see the doctor. So actual number of the patient probably is much more than what is being shown here. So but anyway, for those who visited the doctor is about 40,000. But last 30 years, after the burst of bubble economy and the globalization and advancement of technology, then people are suffered by the change of the work style as well. So more than 1 million people are visiting the doctors. So the potential is probably higher. So probably 5% of the people are depressed, or maybe, but maybe the as a ratio maybe could be some among you, but maybe no depressed person are here. But anyway, the worst case scenario is they commit to suicide. And then the government is taking measures to prevent committing suicide, but still, even the 6 times more of the death from traffic accident is committing suicide. And then also that's to give more burden to the medical expenses, and they cannot work. And think about those then, that we are losing about $24 billion, and then those people are actually working generations. Of course, that dementia and so on are for the elder citizen, but actually for those medical expenses covered by those working generations. And if those people cannot work due to these depressions, and if they committed suicide, then the countermeasure for the dementia is important, but also the countermeasure for the depression is also very important, and that is one of the objectives of our study. So then the issues in the medicine related to the depressions. There are many mental clinics in Tokyo as well, they are just counseling or asking questions, and then they do a kind of the test, psychological test, and then subjectively they come up with the diagnosis and then criteria. But in the brain, there's the characteristic factors, and also there are some are weak in stress. So, and genetic background are not reflected. And then those kind of, and during the development of this network and weakness of stress probably be built. And then one day, the person is severely exposed to stress. But then the treatment and diagnosis is not based on the pathologies. So the cancer, on the contrary, they do the test and then they come up with the proper drugs, but not for the depressions. So what we are doing in Hiroshima University is what we're doing here. So for the depressed patient with depressions, with the cooperation with the clinics in the city. So when the patient comes, then our team goes and talk to the patients, and then getting the acceptance, and then having the informed consent. Then we ask them to come to take MRIs, and then check with the biomarkers, and then we do the test again. And which part of brain and what happened in those. So not only a cell but the brain is more complicated, and then very complicated pathways are there. So where it occurs or where this disorder occurs have to be found out. And so using the AIs, so they have machine learnings using this technology, and the huge amount of patient data when those accumulated, and then not only the symptom but also other data are accumulated and added to the computer, and then by that, then they analyze the pattern by using AI, and based on that the neuroscience, and try to develop the method for the diagnosis. And when the cases is accumulated, then it's going to be a big data. And then that will be the diagnosis based on the pathology using AI. And also brain data or neural data. So since we can visualize those data on brains, so we can see this function is lowered or hyperactive. So the patient can see. And then the patient can also be trained to elevate that the lowering part of the activities, or maybe the control the one of hyperactive. So maybe they can do the neurofeedback trainings, and this is under the development of the clinical study. So then this is the neurocircuitry relevant to depressive symptoms. So the depressive mood, and also loss of the feeling of doing. So this kind of abnormality of this area in the brain. So if they are lost interest, then so they lose motivations. And also the QST. So they use a PET, and then we do the core research, what kind of the change in serotonin or dopamines. And it start to be clarified little by little, and collecting all these data in a subjective way, we can find the causes of the depression and also can provide the diagnosis. Then those data, when those data are accumulated, then here you might think, what are these? But here, these are the brain data of the patient, and also if the patient have any the child abuse or trauma, like a bullying, so and so on, or neglect. So if the patient have such experience, so this is subjective, but ask the patient to score it if they have experience or not. And then this is this activity of the brain regions. So to rank the data, so which will be done by the person in charge of AI. So accumulating those data, then we can create the patterns by color, low to high. These, the red circulated is area. They evaluate that's a symptom of the depressions, 6 weeks or 6 months and so on, that after medications. Then they evaluate the respondents of the drugs. So then top one, which is the drug is not taken, so the healthy volunteer. But this is a patient with depressions. About 3,000 data we extracted, and then we see some patterns. So these 3 patterns. This is the drug work and not. So the stress at the time in child. So if they do have the child abuse and trauma scale high, this would be the patterns. And then probably has very close relationship with the response to the drugs. And they measure the MRI. They use the brain activities by MRI, then high, low, high. Then efficiency related to the child abuse and also the part of the certain regions of the brains. So by analyzing these, then we come to know. So we have normally the hypothesis and the hypothesis driven and verified. That's how we did it in the past. But data driven work. So without having any bias, and we try to see and then read the data by using AI. So then looking at this, for example, those non-responder to the depressant, then they have a high stress in the childhood and also high activity in brain in regions. Then if they measure in advance, then we can predict that they are non-responder to the drug. Then the patient doesn't have to take the drug which is not required. So, or they don't have to do trial and error of the drug to see. So then if we know it in advance, then we can start a different approach of the treatment instead of just give the drugs. So then while they are trying this drug and that drug, and then easily 3 to 6 months passed and become very difficult. So this is more schematics, but the patient with the depressant. So since we are diagnosed by subjective perspective, so young or maybe that's a senior depressions or maternity blue depressions, those are, or maybe the weekday depressions. Can they call the depressions? Because they are very fine when they are off the work. But still they are diagnosed as a depressions. So looking into that some brain functions and also the biomarker from blood, and using AI, And then if there is any common patterns that can be detected, and then based on that, we can see then the brain activity and network, high, low, high, or maybe the child's time abuse trauma score, high, high, low, or these are the antidepressant doesn't work. Then for those who have high the brain network and also high the child abuse and trauma symptoms, then the drug doesn't work. So maybe if we can know this in advance. This is article on the newspaper and press release in last year, and then October 23. Today I also received an email. So in this, the NHK Science Zero came to have interviewed me. So this will be on air in the February 3rd on the 11:30 p.m. So if you if you watch it, then you can get a little more detailed explanations. So now I'd like to talk about the innovation by positive Kansei. So this is completely opposite. The original offering is, since we are so materialized and then rich, then why still there is people with depressions? So the smartphone is available and then things become convenient, but still there are lack of communication and people become depressed. So it become mental health. So not only the innovation for the materializations, but we also have to think about the innovation considering of the happiness of the mind. So now we are working with Mazda, the automotive company. So visualized the emotions or brain functions, and then as a tool, for the brain emotion interface, and to realize the society with the tolerant minds. So it might be a bit difficult, but originally the basis for the concept is that there is emotions or feeling. On the top of that, there is a concept. So this area of the study had been accumulated, and then behind the brain, or so that's the integration of the sensation is at the temporal lobe, the occipital, and also, and then for the emotions, the affection is for this the deep green. So the insula is related to this insula. And then judged by the brain and the integrated and controlled, this is a frontal lobe. So the affections, mechanism of affection is actually interoceptive perceptions. So that, for example, the organs, feeling of the organs goes to the brain. So the heartbeats, or maybe this, those are called the interoceptive perceptions. And then the insula informations, and then compare with the past experiences, and then prediction occurs. Then that's the affection occurs. So then, if you feel some kind of the reaction of the organ, then you feel anxiety. But if you actually do it and you don't have any problem, so if there is a gap in between, so there is an error of the predictions, then there is a findings. and they became that's a network, and that's will create the kansei. And by learning that, and then that will be accumulated. So the sensitive informations, and then the emotions occurs, and then we image next what's going to happen next, and then predictions. And if there's a different information comes from the sensuous or the organs, the perceptions comes to the brain and predictions, and then the affection comes. Then if there is an error of the prediction, then there is a kind of silent network that you notified it or you recognize it. Then so by checking this, that we can make it. So this is the three axes. So this is the comfortable, uncomfortable, and this is arousal, and also this is drowsy. And then for the predictions for future and also past recollections. So this is three-dimensional. So then predicting the futures, and then also the arousal is high. So then this can be measured with this three-dimensional method. So taking it in MRI and also the brain wave, and then if we can do it in a more wearable EEG, and this is the subject, and see the images, and then this is the data, and then the brain, which part of the brain is active, and then this is a meter of that's a waku excitement, and then we try to implement it to the automotive and let it move, and then we link with our institute to see. So this meter we created in the institute, it will be implemented to the car, and when they are excited, it's red, and if not, in blue. So let's see, this is a trials. So when the car, it goes straight, but then when they are countdown, so now, if it is straight road, then they are bored. But the cellar room, if they have to do the windings, if they repeat several times, they like to do it better next time. So then they start to be more excited with the countdown. So then during the countdown period, then person can predict, and then this can be used with the implementation with the car, and then that will be read by car, and then change the drivability, operability of the driving. And then when the car become absolute, then the accumulated data can be taken as a chip and then bring it to the new car as well. So this kind of things is used in the various other businesses, so such as like Hiroshima Gas or Sapporo Beer or Anderson, the bakery shops, or maybe other the printing companies and so on. And at the Hiroshima University, the negative concept data are gathered now, and also the positive data is now under collections and try to make a big data. Then we can apply using the AI in the various areas. So it can be used for the human development programs. And that's how we are working at the moment. So thank you for your listening.